Hi, Richie here.
Hey Richie, how you doing? This is Ken from Ottawa.
How's it going, man?
Doing well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Congratulations on the new album and belated happy birthday.
Thank you.
This is quite the accomplishment. 50 songs for your 50th birthday. How did this all get started?
Well, I had originally recorded and written and recorded what would have been a normal length record, and that would have come out this year. And I was on the road at the beginning of last summer, and I started going through some of my folders and just checking out a lot of ideas that I had never finished. Some were really far along and just needed a lead vocal. Other songs were nothing more than a click track and a bass line. And I started kind of working on this stuff while I was on the road. And then somewhere along the line, I had the thought of, man, if I could finish enough songs, maybe I could release a 50-song record, on my 50th birthday. I'm only going to turn 50 once, and I thought that'd be kind of unique. A lot of people put out, albums that have a lot of songs, but usually it's some kind of compilation or remixes or greatest hits. So the idea was a record that's literally 50 new songs. And so I came off the road, I started working on it, and then as I was working on some of the already existing ideas, I started writing new stuff. So it all kind of snowballed. Then once I got, 30 or so songs finished, I looked at where I was at timing-wise, and I realized that I was probably going to hit my goal. And so I think I might have put something on Instagram, like hinting to the fact that this was coming. And so here we are. I got there, and now we have a 50-song record. It takes a lot of time to listen to.
Yeah, I must admit I haven't even been able to get through the whole thing yet. I've done two CDs, but I'm working on the third.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're better off taking it like disc by disc and kind of look at the first disc as one record and the second disc as another and so on. I think that'd probably be the best way to do it.
Absolutely. How far back are we going with these songs that were already in folders?
Well, the oldest songs are More Than This and Already Scarred. They were recorded sometime in either the late 90s or the early 2000s. And so those were finished and mastered, and for some reason I never released them. I was just sitting on them forever, and feels like forever. And then the next songs would be Play the Field and Wide Open. Those two songs have been sitting for a long time. And then, everything else, it's hard for me to say. I don't know. I don't have timestamps really that I pay attention to, but there are songs that are literally a couple months old that, I'd be working on an older song and then suddenly have an idea. So I know, like, the song Innocuous is very new. The song Black Mark is quite new. And there's a song called I Am the Clown. That's at least, 15 years ago that I recorded that. So it's kind of, there's not a lot of, there's only like 5 songs that were that were recorded and finished years ago. The rest of them may have been started back then, or but they weren't finished until now.
Right. Now, you recorded everything?
Yeah, that's right. Anything that isn't credited to someone else is me. There's a few. If you had the physical copy, which I don't know that you do, there's a liner note in there that there's a couple credits. There's a guy that played a trumpet solo who's credited, and there's 2 or 3 drummers on 2 or 3 songs that are credited, but everything else is me.
Yeah, I don't have the physical copy. It's on its way, so I haven't had a chance to take a look at the liners. But I'm just trying to figure out how you go about recording everything by yourself. I mean, if you're jamming with, like the Winery Dogs, Portnoy and Sheehan are throwing in their 2 cents, they're writing their lines. But when you're doing it on your own, how are you doing all this? How do you start it?
Well, it's really, I mean, it's the way I hear music. And, if you look at solo artists, a lot of people, there are a lot of folks that work that way. It's not, it's maybe in the hard rock world it might be a little different. But, I know there's a lot of guys that work the way I work and kind of hear compositions. When I write something, I pretty much know where I'm going with it. If I have a melody, I instantly know what the drum beat is because they're connected. And usually the bass line, follows shortly after that. As far as the mechanics of how I'm able to do it, in my studio, I've got everything mic'd up at all times. So my signal flow for the drum set, for example, the kick, snare, overheads, toms, everything is always mic'd and ready to go. Same thing for the guitar channel and everything else. So what that means is when I'm working, I can do a performance and then go overdub, and even a week later, if I decide I don't like a drum fill, I can go back and fix it. Sometimes when I record, I'll always put up a click track so I have something to play against. But sometimes I'll put up a guide guitar and then work from there. Or sometimes I'll just do the drums right away. Like, for example, there's a song on the record called Black Mark. And I came up with the idea of the song, and it all came to me at once. I heard the melody and the structure and the arrangement, and rather than spend time doing a guide guitar or a guide vocal, I just put a click track up and I ran downstairs, I jumped behind the drums, and I played the song from top to bottom. And that take is the take that you hear on the record. It was a one-take drum pass, and then I started overdubbing to it. And then probably when it got close to being done, I may have punched in and fixed a drum fill here or there. But the point is I played that whole track imagining the band was playing with me. But if you were in the studio, the only thing you would be hearing is a click track and me playing the drums. So there's all kinds of ways to do it, but the thing that makes it easy is that everything is mic'd up at all times.
You can just jump on anything at any time and give it a go. Wow.
Exactly.
That's amazing. When I did my review for the first disc, one thing did kind of jump out at me, and that was the lyrics in Black Mark. Pretty aggressive at points. Just wondering, yeah. I'm not going to say them right now, but just wondering where you get your inspiration for your lyrics.
I don't know. Maybe that song was Forensic Files.
It is pretty aggressive compared to the other stuff on the album.
Yeah, I think that might be, the song You Can't Save Me is kind of aggressive, but I think that Black Mark is probably the most aggressive lyric I've ever written. But, I don't know, it just kind of, it rhymed and it was easy to sing, and I thought, why not? I'll just have to put one of those little stickers on the album.
Well, that helps sell, doesn't it?
I don't know, does it? Maybe. I'm not sure. I only have one other record that has that little sticker on it.
I don't know. When I was young and I saw one of those stickers, I always bought it.
Yeah. Well, then there you go.
Yeah, just to piss off my parents.
Adds a little extra excitement.
Exactly. So, what are you playing on this? Are there any new guitars?
I don't think there's anything new per se. One of the interesting things, there's guitar performances on this record that are like, 17, 18 years ago. Obviously with some of the songs that were finished, but like there's songs that like I don't know what I used on some of the stuff. Now the newer the things that I completed, this year or last year, I know what I was using. I have my signature guitars, my Strat, my Telecaster. I've got a hollow body Yamaha that I use a lot for texture, and as far as amps, I've used everything on that record from the old Cornford stuff to Marshall Plexis that I have. I have a couple of vintage ones, and then Fender. I use a lot of Fender amps, Vibra King and the Vibra Lux and Fender Bassman. And then I also used quite a bit of my Victory signature model amp, which is a newer amp. So there's a lot of variation there. What I can tell you is that the microphone, except with the exception of one or two things that I recorded in a hotel room, the microphone is the same microphone I've been using since the 90s, and it's a U87 that was built in 19 what was it, 1975. I had contacted Neumann, and I wanted to know how old the microphone was, and I gave them the serial number, and they told me it was manufactured in 1975.
Good Lord. And you're still using it?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's amazing. What about acoustics? What do you use for acoustics?
I have a couple of Taylor acoustic guitars, but on some of the songs, and I know on Devil's Hand, I have an old Gibson. I don't know what year it is, but it's so old that it says the Gibson on it, and it belonged to my great-grandfather on my mother's side. And
Wow.
I have that guitar, and it's very cool. And so I recorded that guitar. I believe it's on Innocuous, and it's also on Devil's Hand.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Devil's Hand, because without sounding too ass-kissy here, that is one of the greatest guitar solos I've ever heard.
Oh, man, thank you. Thanks. I had a great time with that. That was one of those crazy solos where I just kept going and going and going, and I knew I wanted to do that kind of scatting thing, so in order to do that, you have to record both at the same time. So I had the guitar signal path, which was, pretty simple, going through an amp, relatively clean setting. And then I had the room microphone, my U87 turned on, so you could hear my voice. So I was kind of scatting, mumbling along with what I was playing, and it's kind of an interesting sound because you can hear me. If I'm not singing a note, I'm kind of grunting. It's all the stuff that you hear that you normally don't record. But the other thing that's interesting is you get to hear the actual acoustics of the guitar. If you listen, you can hear the actual strings. Not the amplifier, but the room acoustics of the guitar in the control room. It's kind of interesting sound.
Now, how much of that is worked out, and how much of it is winging it?
It's all winging it.
It's all winging it. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't really. Even if I have a solo, like that solo is just, me talking like I'm talking to you right now, just kind of whatever, just playing over the chords. But every now and then, like the solo in the body of that song, I'm kind of playing a variation of, the melody. That wasn't really worked out. I just kind of heard that, and so I played it. I tried it a few times and, picked the best version. So I don't really work out. I know a lot of guitar players will go and work out their solos. I don't think that I've ever done that. Like, I've never sat down and said, okay, here's how I'm going to start it. Now I'm going to play this riff. Okay, then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to end it like this. I've never done that in my life. I always wing it to the sense of, like, I don't know what I'm going to play until I'm in the moment. But I will say that I do spend time on a solo to the sense that, I'll take me multiple takes, and then I might get an intro that I like. Okay, so that's a great way to start it. And punch me in, and then I'll drop in and play for another however long until I, don't like something or until I finish it. So they are structured and worked out in the sense of what I just described, but it always happens in the moment, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, you do realize you're making us all look bad, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that that's really, I don't really know that that's really that unusual. I was in a band with Stanley Clark, and he told me he was doing something with Jeff Beck. And when I was playing on the record I did with Stanley, I was doing my solos the way I was doing them, and he was like, "Wow," he says, "It's funny. So you do the exact same thing that Jeff did on the record we made together." He would just kind of play. I mean, this is what Stanley told me anyway. He would just play, a few bars or as much as he could, and then stop, drop in the next bit, and, until it was right, and then move on. So. I've definitely done a lot of that, but then every now and then you hit something, like on the Devil's Hand. I just hit it. It was like I just went for it, and that's pretty much what I played. I might have went back and fixed a few notes that I thought were a little sloppy, but in general, that was like one or two pass kind of solo, just kind of going for it. And it sounds like that. That's the idea. I wanted it to sound live. I wanted it to sound like. I was just there playing it. I did not want it to sound like, I was studying what I was going to do.
Right, and here's a quick question from my mom. I played her that guitar solo. I took it over to her place, and I said, "You got to hear this." And her first question was, will he be able to do this live the same way it is on the album? Do you worry about that, or do you just kind of wing it when you're live as well?
Never. I never worry about that. Now, we played that song a few weeks ago. We were on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and we played it, and it went over nicely. But, the studio is the studio, and live is live. Now, I know there's people that would like to argue, but for me, my first concern is the composition. So without the composition, there is no live, unless you're going to be in a professional cover band to play other people's music. So if you're making your own music, the most important thing, the first thing, is composition, and then how you're going to record that and present it. So the focus being that it's possible that you may never play live because you're in the studio recording and writing. That is the focus. So everything that I do, every step that I make, is what is best for this particular song. So that means if a kazoo in the second verse is going to drive this and be interesting for three measures, then there's going to be a kazoo overdub or whatever instrument. Suddenly in the bridge, it'd be really awesome to have a violin play this melody because that tonality is really going to evoke a certain emotion. Then I will do it. And then once the composition's done, live is a different ballgame. There are things that will not change. The lyrics will stay the same. The melody of the song will stay the same. And that is the core of the composition, at least in the music that I write. So everything else that happens around that can be interpreted and discussed. Now, you might have a bass line that's integral to the song. You play the bass line, you play the drum beat. But I'm not interested in duplicating what I did in the studio in that particular moment for that particular situation. When I get on stage, it's a different ballgame. And the beauty of it is that these things evolve over time. And I have many examples. I have a song, for example, called Help Me, that was on my 24 Hours record. And on that record, the song was very basic and kind of this funky, cool song with a cool riff and a cool breakdown. And that evolved over the last 5 years with my live group into something really interesting and really that the audience was involved in and very exciting. And so live is live. And I don't really get too caught up in that. I have to take into consideration where I am in that moment and focus on that.
Right. I'd like to hear that Kotzen kazoo song, by the way. That might be pretty cool.
I like that example.
Yeah, I've never heard a kazoo in a rock song before. It might be pretty cool.
I bet you have. You just didn't realize.
Probably. Yeah, probably. So you're doing a quick tour of the States, and then you're headed off to Europe, and hopefully...
Right. Now, the States tour is actually in the works. I know there's only a handful of dates that are posted, but we're working on more dates. So that tour should probably run about a month and a half if it all comes together the way we're planning it. Somehow we got the European dates locked in faster. So we have the States in June and hopefully into July. And then we've got Europe in September.
So hopefully, I don't know if you remember Ottawa, you played at the Brass Monkey. Hopefully we can get you back there again.
Well, that would be excellent. Yeah, I would love that. We'll have to see.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Before I let you go, is there any chance of a 51 for 51? Is that going to happen?
No, but, oh my God, that would mean I would have to write another 50 songs plus one this year. Absolutely not. I think, it's like, you have a good movie and then they ruin it with a sequel. I think that this was something that was a once and done. When I finished this, I was joking with someone. I said, I'm never making another record again because by the time I was done, I wouldn't even walk past the door that led to the studio for a week.
I can imagine.
It's just such an undertaking.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do live?
I like the idea of singles. I like the idea that I can write a song tomorrow, and the next day I can have it up, and people can get their hands on it. So I'm sure there's going to be more music, but probably not to the extent of a 50-song album.
It is quite a bit. So live, are you going to focus on this album, or are you going to do a bunch of stuff from everything you've done?
No, I like it when bands play songs that we all know and love, and then add in a few new ones. So I think for this tour, there's certain songs that I think people expect me to play that I like playing. And then I have to look at what songs in this record will translate with the guys that I'm playing with. And, I could picture, obviously we did Devil's Hand. Stick the Knife would probably be a good one since it opens the album. I think the song Dogs would really translate well. So I'd like to do 4 or 5 at least from the new record.
I'd like to hear Black Mark just to see you get aggressive with it.
Oh, yeah. What I say? Yeah, I don't want to say it because it's pretty violent. Yeah, I can do that. I'll do that if I come to Canada.
Are you touring with the same band that you were touring with? Geez, I can't remember how long ago it was you were here, a couple of years ago. Same guys?
Not quite. Dylan and I, Dylan's the bass player, we're still playing together. We just did a gig last week, and we brought in Tal Bergman, who was the drummer that I used when I opened for the Stones back in 2006. And Tal and I played together our very first time when I was 26 years old. We were part of a group that was a house band in a club in Los Angeles on a jam night, and we became friends ever since. So we played our first Richie Kotzen show together last week on the Monsters of Rock cruise. It was our first show since we toured together in Japan, opening for the Rolling Stones. So it was very exciting. And if all goes according to plan, he will be with Dylan and I on this upcoming run.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I know you're busy. I'm going to let you go. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this.
All right, man.
All right. Good luck with the tour, and hopefully we'll see you up in Ottawa at some point soon.
All right. Bye.